right, so we're back at math today. We're moving on to the start of another unit. This is Unit 2, which will encompass standards 4 and 5, which are graphing and writing equations of functions. All right, and I've moved from kind of a PowerPoint presentation to working with my dot camera because now there's going to be a lot more steps in the process, and I want to be able to show those to you, go through those with you, and it's just a little bit easier with me writing here on the paper than going through a PowerPoint. So a little adjustment here, but nothing too big that you guys can't handle. So welcome to another day of math. We're going to work with some evaluation here to get started. So what I'm going to ask you to do is find Algebra 1, Unit 2, Lesson 2 notes. It says graphing functions with the table values there at the top like you can see on my paper. All right, get those out. You might also need a calculator. So if you have a calculator handy, that would be great. If you need to pull up on your phone right now, that would work as well. But for some of these, you might need a calculator in some capacity. So have that out with you as well. And so what I would like you to do right now is go ahead and try problems 1, 2, and 3 here as our opener. Evaluate each expression for the given value of x. Use order of operations to simplify each expression below. So go ahead, pause the video, work those 3 problems, turn the video back on, and we'll see how you did. All right, so I have the problems already worked, so I'm going to put my work here for us to see. All right, just so you don't have to watch me write, and then we'll kind of go through each problem here. So here's what evaluate means. Evaluate means take a number and plug it in for the variable. So in this case, we're given x equals -5. And so wherever I see an x in this expression, I'm going to put -5 in. And so I did that right here. So where the x is, I plugged in -5. Notice everything else remains the same. Now, we want to use order of operations. Now, for some of you, you may not remember order of operations, so let's just kind of go through a very quick reminder of order of operations. All right, so P stands for parentheses. All right, that also really encompasses all grouping symbols. All right, that could be absolute value bars, it could be brackets. All right, E stands for exponents. All right, so when we have something squared, right, or something cubed, all right, and then we have multiplication and division, all right, so multiplication and division. Now, we say multiplication and division, but they are equivalent operations, so you just work whichever one comes first in your problem. So when you work left to right, if I see multiplication first, I do that first. If I see division first, I do that. Same with addition and subtraction. All right, so those are really the things that we want to work through. Okay, so now when I go back to my first problem, I've plugged -5 in for x. So I have my grouping symbols here. So the first thing I want to do is -5 plus 7, which is 2. Now remember, there's implicit multiplication here. We don't actually see a multiplication symbol, but when 2 things are right next to each other in math, we assume that is multiplication. So this is 4 times 2 and then -2. So I have to do this multiplication first. So 4 times 2 is 8, and then I bring down the -2. And then 8 minus 2 is 6. So 6 is your final answer. All right, so now moving to problem 2. Now it tells us, okay, x is 5. So wherever there's an x, I'm going to take this 5 and plug it in. So I only see one x. I'm going to take the 5 and I'm going to put it in here. Now, once again, we're going to start with those grouping symbols. So we have our parentheses here. So I'm going to do 5 minus 7. That gives me -2. Now, I have an exponent this time. I did not have an exponent here, so if I'm missing a piece, I just go to the next step in my order of operations. So I need to do -2 squared. Now remember, -2 squared, and I'm going to kind of write that right here, is -2 times -2. So a negative times a negative is a positive. 2 times 2 is 4. And you can see now we're to a step very similar to what we saw right here, correct? All right, so -5 times 4 is -20, and then I bring down the addition. -20 plus 5 is -15. All right, now let's go to our final problem here. Notice these bars, okay, so absolute value. All right, so if you didn't know what those bars are, those are absolute value bars. And we treat them like parentheses in the sense of order of operations. They mean something different. I'll talk about the meaning in just a moment, but as far as when do I do them or when do I use them, it's in the same idea as parentheses. All right, so x equals 9. So I'm going to put the 9 in for x here. Now, so within my absolute values, I have to perform order of operations. I need to simplify to get down to one exact number. So I have 9 minus 12, which is negative 3. Now I apply my absolute value to negative 3. Now, what absolute value means is how far is negative 3 from 0. All right, so if we think about on a number line, right, here is 0, here's 1, negative 2, and negative 3. So absolute value is saying how far, how many steps is negative 3 from 0? And the answer is it's 3 steps. I would step once, twice, and 3 times. All right? So the absolute value of negative 3 is a positive 3. The absolute value of every number is going to be positive because it's number of steps. All right? It's just whether we're going to the right or we're going to the left. All right, so 5 times 3 is 15. 15 minus 6 is 9. All right, so there's evaluation. And we wanted to start with that because that's a prerequisite skill that most of you have seen and done in your prior history before coming to Algebra 1. All right, and it's going to be a big piece of our lesson today. So now, all right, let me take that out of the way and go back to our notes here. So what we're going to do today, let's see if I can kind of get this all on the screen here. All right, so we're going to create a table of values by evaluating values of x. And that's going to give us points that we can then plot, and then that'll give us the shape of what particular curve we are working with. So now go ahead and flip your notes over. All right, we're going to start with our first problem here. All right. Okay, there we go. All right. So once again, what we want to do when we look at this is, all right, so we have 5 different x values here on the left. Okay. And we're going to take each of these x values and I'm going to plug it in for x here to figure out what y value goes with that x value. All right. So it's going to be very similar to the opener. Now the nice thing is it's going to be very repetitive. So if we get the order of operations correct on the first problem, we're just going to follow that same model as we work through the next few problems. Okay, so now 3/5. All right, so y equals 3/5 times negative 10 minus 4. All right, so now once again, this is where you might need a calculator. If you don't feel comfortable with fractions, it's not really a big deal because we can use a calculator. All right, so you can type 3/5 into your calculator. All right, I'm going to pull my calculator here just so you guys can see how to do a fraction. Now, there's a couple different ways to do a fraction. There's a little bit right here so you guys can see a little better. All right, so there's a couple different ways to do a fraction. One is that bar means division. So if I want to do 3/5 on my calculator, I can convert it to a decimal by doing 3 divided by 5 and hit enter. So the decimal equivalent is 0.6, right? So I can do that, right? So I can just do that. And I can convert it to a decimal if I would like. So that would be like 0.6 times negative 10 minus 4. So that's one way of doing the problem. And then you could just go through your order of operations, right? So now I have multiplication and subtraction. I have to do the multiplication next. So 0.6 times, and here's what's really nice about the calculators is you can type it just like it looks, right? So I can even put in those parentheses, and then the negative symbol, all right, you have to use the negative symbol and not the subtraction symbol. So negative 10, like so. And that's negative 6. So y equals negative 6 minus 4. So I can do negative 6 minus 4. And that tells me that y equals negative 10, 10. I'm sorry, y equals negative 10. All right. So now what that means is that the point, all right, so what x value did we plug in? Negative 10. What y value did we get out? Negative 10. All right, and so that's the point that we're going to graph. So I'm going to go negative 10. All right, so negative 10. So remember, this is your x-axis. This is x negative over here. This is the x positive here. This is y positive here. This is y negative here. All right, so now negative 10 would be negative 10 here. And then negative 10 is just off our graph, so I'm going to just kind of plot it right there. Okay, so kind of estimate that. All right, so now let's go back and do negative 5. So when I look at negative 5, I have y equals 3/5 negative 5 minus 4. So y equals. Now, I'm going to show you another way to use fractions. Right? So one way is to just convert it to a decimal. Totally fine. The other way is to use your fraction key. And a lot of calculators have it. So right here is my fraction key. So notice if I hit that, that n over d key, all right, it gives me a fraction. All right, and I can just type in 3, and then I can arrow down to 5, and there's my 3/5, just like that. And really, for all intents and purposes, this is the calculator that you can use for the next couple of years and be just fine. All right, so if you're going to buy a calculator, the TI-30 XS, all right, is really, really good. This is the one we would recommend that you purchase. It's not super expensive, $20 to $30 at most, I think. And when you're in school, we have these available, all right? So when we do get back in class and we're working in person, all right, we'll have these available for you. So notice now I can type my fraction like that. I can put in my parentheses and plug in -5, hit enter, and I get -3. So then I have -3 minus 4, and that's -7. So now our point would be -5, -7. All right, so now I'm going to go to the origin. So -5 in the x direction, and then -7 in the y direction. That puts me right here. All right, so let's go ahead and do 0. So y equals 3/5 times 0 minus 4. Y equals, now 3/5 times 0 is just 0. And then 0 minus 4 is -4. Now, once again, feel free to pause the video. So if you need a little bit more writing time, right, to catch up, to make sure you're processing, all right, so, if you want to watch me do the entire process, pause the video and then you write it to make sure you're understanding it. That's totally fine, all right, but just make sure you do what you need to do to understand everything completely. So then my next point would be x is 0, we get y is -4. So x is 0 means I don't move left or right, and then I just move down 4 to right here. All right, so let's do y equals, 3/5, and then I'm going to plug in 5 this time for x. All right, now 3/5 times 5 would be 3. All right, and then I bring down the -4, and then y equals 3 minus 4 is -1. So I get 5, -1. All right, so 5, -1 would be right there. And hopefully you're starting to see what type of function we're going to have here, what type of graph we're going to have based on those initial points. Let's go ahead and finish the problem, and let's go y equals 3/5 times 10 minus 4. All right, so 3/5, all right, times 10 is 6, and then minus 4, and 6 minus 4 is 2. So my final point would be 10, 2. So I'm going to come over here and plot 10, 2 right here. And you can see of our 4 functions, which one is this? It is a line. So I'm just going to draw my line. If you want to have a ruler to draw your line, that's really good. All right. And there's our graph. All right, we're going to do one more problem together. So now let's go ahead and look at, let me switch out my pages here. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this guy. All right, so we should be on problem 2. All right, so right here. All right, so let's go ahead and start working. So notice, all right, we have an x here. So we're going to take our 5x values here on the left, all right, and we're going to plug them in here and follow order of operations. All right, so y equals negative, and I'm going to replace this x with that -4 there. And notice this negative is separated by the parenthesis. All right, it's very important that you have that. It can change that outcome of your problem pretty significantly if you do not. So it's very good to get in habits of writing well. All right. So now notice we have to do an order of operations. So I have to do my parentheses first. So I need to do -4 plus 2. So this negative stays on the outside of those parentheses. And then -4 plus 2 is -2 squared plus 4. Now after I've done those parentheses, I need to do my exponent. So now I need to do -2 squared. Now, once again, let me show you how to do that on your calculator here. So I'm going to clear. And once again, get in the habit of typing in your calculator just like it looks. So I'm going to open my parentheses. -2, close those parentheses, and then right here, all right, is your square button. So I can put that square on my exponent, or excuse me, on my parentheses just like that. Hit enter, and so -2 squared is 4. And once again, notice this negative is sitting out here. So -2 squared is 4. And then I bring down the plus 4 right there. And then -4 plus 4 is 0. All right, so my first point, x was -4 and y was 0. All right, so -4, 0 right there. Okay, so now let's move on to -3. So y equals, I'm going to leave that negative outside. I put in -3 for my x, bring everything else down. So your equation should look exactly the same, except for where the x, we should have a number now. So once again, let's simplify inside of our parentheses. So -3 plus 1 is -1 squared plus 4. All right, y equals -1 squared is 1, and then plus 4. And then -1 plus 4 is 3. So this is -3, 3 for our point. So -3, 3 right here. There we go. All right. So let's look at -2. So y equals negative. And I'm going to plug -2 in like so. All right, so now -2 plus 2 is 0. 0 squared is 0. So all of this, right, and -0 is still 0, so that leaves us with just 4. All right, so -2, 4 is our point for this guy. So -2, 4 right there. All right, so now notice, definitely not a line, right? So we already see that in the points that we're creating. So hopefully it's going to look like one of our 4 functions. So let's do our last 2 points here. All right, so let's plug -1 in. And simplifying inside of that parenthesis, so negative. And then -1 plus 2 is 1. Okay, 1 squared is 1, so I get -1 plus 4, and then -1 plus 4 is 3. So I have -1, 3 for my point. And notice what happened here. So -1, 3, I'm coming back down. So we've turned, right? And so think about what functions have a turning point. We were going up, and now we're coming back down. So hopefully you're thinking that this is either quadratic or absolute value. All right, one last point here to wrap things up. Let's plug in 0. All right, and then 0 plus 2 is 2. I get that guy. 2 squared is 4. And so -4 plus 4 is 0. All right, so now what we have is our final point, which is 0, 0. So we're at the origin here, just like that. All right, so there it is. There's our graph. Now notice, all right, this is not a straight line, right? So if it was a straight line on both sides of that turning point, it would be absolute value, but it's curved. So that means that we have a quadratic graph. I'm just going to slide that over so I can come through and draw our graph. So there's our kind of U-shaped curve, right, coming down. All right, my friends, so that is a wrap on our introduction to graphing functions with tables of values. We'll pick up and we'll look at an absolute value graph and an exponential graph when we come back together in class tomorrow. So what you need to do now is obviously stop the video, go in and do your Unit 2 Lesson 2 video check-in. Let us know how you felt about this video and if there's anything that you're still unsure about. That way we can address it in class tomorrow. All right, so you guys have a wonderful night. Go do something fun. All right, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.